The absolute most important thing that you can have on your mind is management. All right, let's chit chat about a little bit about managing these meat birds. So if you decided to or are thinking about getting into pastured poultry, the absolute most important thing that you can have on your mind is management. Management and your responsibility and how you executed that management is what is 99% of the time going to be the reason you were either successful or it was an absolute failure. These are cornish-cross. This is the industry standard, right? So if you have, Foster Farms or whatever, they're all starting out with something similar to regular cornish-cross. There's other spin-offs from it now that produce meat even faster. Just go with the standard cornish-cross, in my opinion, 8 to 10 weeks. I always push it like 10 to 12 weeks. And the reason I do that is because there is some health problems with rapid growth, and depending on your heat, the time of year you're running them, heat, your chicken tractor construction, whether it's got enough breeze, whether their density is too high, all these different things, how much, actual vegetation they're getting, how good your pasture is, those can all add up to having a really excellent bird or having some of these known complications with these birds arise. So I found that if I back off the feed consumption by a little bit and I just stretch out the management process a couple extra weeks, that my survival rate is just increased immensely. I generally lose 2 birds per 100 once they hit the field. I get like a lame chicken in both pens. So we got 50 and 50. I generally get 1 lame chicken, and I don't even really know why. Sometimes I don't at all. Other times I have lost 1 to a predator. So there's just that's my average, is I lose 1 per 50, which is pretty darn good. That's not talking about, when the chicks arrive and they've gone through the stress of shipping. We're just talking about once they hit the field. The most common thing I find with these guys, and when people talk about the cornish-cross, is that they're super messy bird and that they smell, and people are like, I'm never doing that again. It was a disgusting process. And this is why that is. You didn't do your damn job. I have a real problem with people blaming an animal or a third party because they didn't do their job. And your job is to move these things at least once a day. They are not laying hens. They do not go in a stationary pen. You cannot just put them in a large dog run and think that at the end of 8 to 10 weeks that is not going to be absolutely disgusting, fly infested, parasites. You can't do that. It is the absolute worst thing you can do. They are not great foragers, even though once you start moving them daily, they become much better foragers, which is why another reason I move them twice a day instead of once a day. It's also why I put the feed on the ground sometimes, because they get really aggressive as they get bigger in terms of like, I need my food now. And so they jump all over each other. And I found that if you have these set up and you have them like mounted to this, it can be easier process because you're kind of just tossing it in, pouring it into the thing, but they really like climb all over each other. So if you put the feed in here, and at times you go to maybe distract them with some feed in the far corner and then try to slide this in real quick, when they get to a certain age like they are now, you'll just get like 20 of them will hit this thing real quick. And I've had, heads get caught under these. So once they get to I stopped using this about 3 days ago. And it's not big enough. I need a 5-footer or something a little larger, to be honest with you. I don't know what my dog's barking at. So I've always put some of it on the ground, and I like it because I can spread them all out. It's less stressful for the birds. They're not fighting each other. But I also don't do that. I wouldn't do that if I only moved them once, because it would cause too much damage to the grass. If you keep this square footage, which is what we talked about in the previous video when I built these things, 8 by 10 or 10 by 12, and then match it to the proper amount of birds, so you're getting the exact right amount of square footage per bird per pen, it is the calculated amount of nitrogen load that grass average in the United States. So it's going to vary depending on where you live. Can absorb per day. So if you leave them on here for 2 days in the same spot, on average you're going to overload your soil, and you could get some burning and some some death of soil critters, because it's just too much toxicity. So if that can happen in just a couple days, then think about what happens when somebody's keeping these in a stationary pen. I mean, you've made such a toxic environment, it's absurd. So you move these, I move them twice a day for that reason. I want them to get maximized forage. I want them to get maximum exercise to ward off any kind of health problems we might have. Move them twice a day. You're protecting your lawn, you're adding enough fertilizer, and see, we're just doing this in, backyard. I could do this in a field. The field here is a little too far away. Too many critters out there. My livestock guardian dogs up here with the laying hens, so this all works out for us. You could do this in your backyard. It's super easy. You just want to make sure that wherever you're pulling them across is not some barren landscape. You've got to have some grasses there. We've got all kinds of grass and clover and stuff here, so they got plenty to pick on. And here in Missouri, the land is much more resilient than it was back when I did this in Idaho. Part of the reason I insisted on moving them twice a day to start was because as we entered into the dry season in Idaho, the land was not nearly as resilient. It starts to get really dry and cause its own damage just from the heat and lack of moisture. And I didn't want to, exacerbate that issue with adding the stress of the chickens on the land for more time than I had to. So that is what we're doing. We're moving it twice a day. And I guess if we go anything less than once a day is just poor management. You can either use these, which are your typical 5-gallon waters. I'm using those right now. And you can also rig up a way to hang these. I haven't used this in weeks, but when they were smaller, I used the drip waters. I like them. You just have to come up with a way to rig them hanging somewhere around this door, so you can easily fill it, and you can get enough elevation that as they grow, they can get under that. So certainly you can use the drip waters. I've used them to finish before, so the whole time they've been in there, I've used drip waters. I just didn't put the time in to rig up a good place to hang this. So once they got to a certain height, I pulled it out, went to these. It's easier for me. I got my frost-free hydrants right behind me, so I can actually just easily clean these. Your situation may vary. It might be more of a trek for you to haul these things back and forth. As far as predators, we talked about this when I had the construction video. These things do a remarkable job of protecting against predators. Dogs are the best. If you have dog that can, shortly after the predator arrives or before it even gets to the pen, the dog catches wind of it and can start barking. That is the best predator deterrent. If you have these though, we generally carry around some plugs, and so most topography, unless you have a perfect flat backyard or field, you're going to have some divots and ruts in it, or molehills and all kinds of stuff. So your bottom board might not lay flush with the lawn. If that is the case, what you're going to do is you're going to take chunks of 2x4, 1x6, whatever scrap lumber you have, and make sure you walk around after you move it. Make sure you do not have any gaps, and you shove those pieces of 2x4 lumber, whatever it is that you have that's a nice sturdy piece of material, and you're going to fill all those gaps around the bottom. And it's super easy. You can just keep some scrap wood laying on top of this roof as you drag it across the field, and you can pull it off and just fill up holes as needed. And you go to move it the next day, you pull them out, put them back on the roof, pull it. And so it's a simple solution to that. If you got a 2-3 foot long 2x4 and just have like 4 or 5 different varying sizes of material, and that way no matter what kind of hole you're trying to plug up, you've got what you need on hand. To me, that is it's a really simple thing. People freak out about predators. I had one one chicken got like a claw clawed on the back ham. So at some point, when they were much smaller than they were now, this is a couple weeks ago, one of these critters got in and at least got their paw like up and under or something along those lines. I'm assuming at that point the chickens made a fuss and my dog came sprinting over. But yeah, you got to be careful. It was probably my fault. It was in a very undulating part of the field, and I probably didn't take enough care to make sure I wedged something under there. So no chickens lost. That chicken's fine. Those things do happen though quite readily, especially when they're first getting out there. They make a lot of noise because it's a new environment and they're trying to figure out, well, where the heck do I sleep in this thing? And as the sun's going down, I mean, they're attracting everything within 1/8 of a mile. It's kind of ridiculous how loud they can get. So definitely make sure you've got a safe and secure place to put them. Even though this thing does a great job, if you just shove them off into a field that you can't even see, you're probably going to lose some birds. It's just, matter of fact. I think I talked about this, can't remember. If I didn't, these posts here, I made them extra sturdy on the side, and that is so I can add weight. Because here in Missouri, we get winds that are way higher than I got in Idaho, generally speaking, and we get like these straight line thunderstorms, and I want to be able to throw like a 50-pound bag of something or a 5-gallon bucket full of water on the edges of the roof here and have it plenty strong enough to hold it, just to keep a little extra weight on the unit so I don't wake up with a flipped over bird pen and then all my meat birds are running all over the yard trying to wrangle them. That is definitely a situation you don't want. You should probably run these so that in June you're butchering them. Late May, June you're butchering them. This is, again, varies completely on where you live, but you don't want to be running these in peak heat of the summer, especially if you live in the south or out west where it gets really dry and you might get 100 degrees depending on where you're at. In July and August, it puts so much stress on the cardiovascular system. These birds, they're already like growing really fast and their bodies are trying to keep up with the weight they're putting on. Run them earlier in the season or run them later in the season, kind of keep that, dead heat of summer vacant of running any of these birds. Not a big a deal if you're in the like northeast probably, but again, that's weather dependent. I'm not sure if I missed anything regarding moving these guys around. As you saw, I did it earlier. It's super simple. Just make the coop lightweight, which we talked about in the construction video, and you should be good to go. But again, find the solutions, look it up, look at people who are successful. This is, I think, my 900th or 1,000th birds that I've ran. And so, it's something that is just invaluable to be able to have. This meat it blows anything away you can ever find in any store. And if you do find this in the store, it probably will be, and it should be, somewhere between $22 and $25 a chicken. The nutritional content and density within the meat itself and the broth and the juices and the bones and the cartilage is so dense compared to what we've gotten used to here in this country that you can't really look at it cost for cost. Oh, I didn't talk about feed, so we'll do that now. Your feed ration on this is 10 to 14 pounds per the lifespan of each bird. So what I like to do is I grab 4 50-pound bags of the mash. So when they're real small, that's what I'm feeding them out of. And then a 1,000-pound bag of the grower broiler feed. So that'll give me 1,200, and if I need to add, go run out and get a couple extra bags at the end, if they're tough growers or weather's getting kind of funky. So that puts me right at that 1,200 mark, and so you're going to have to do the cost analysis based upon the feed you get in the store. Of course, the higher quality feed you can get, non-GMO. If you really want to go crazy with the price, get actually certified organic feed. So if you're paying, 35 cents a pound, then do your math on 1,200 pounds. And that is how you budget the feed, and you should be running out of feed. Let's just say 1,200 for now. Enough! What are you guys doing? You should be, out of feed at the end of that. So if you do that and you stretch out your measurements along that 10 to 12 week timeline, or 8 to 10 if you want to be more aggressive like the industry tends to be, then you can just go ahead and do your math. Obviously you're adding more feed each week as they continue to grow. And there's plenty of people with spreadsheets that do the calculations. I've just found, I mean, it's so much variance depending on how many birds you have and so on and so forth. You can feed them, you know, stuff if you want to throw compost in there just for fun. That's just added benefit. Don't count it towards their feed. If you've got a big bowl of compost that you've got from the kitchen, you dump it in there and go, I'm not going to feed them tonight. Don't do that, because the protein and fat ratios and all that stuff's way off. And that obviously means you want to get a feed that's pre-mixed with the mineral complex. Most mills do that now, where it's got the trace minerals in there, and it'll post your fat content, and it'll be called grower broiler ration, because it has a higher protein content and it has different ratio of minerals in there as well. So yeah, feed is definitely the most expensive part of this. And you know, it depends, kind of appear expensive at first, but if you plan to use them for several seasons, you got to net that cost out as well over top of, overlay it and stretch it out over 5-7 years or whatever you plan on running the chickens. You can't just look at it and put this whole cost into your first birds, because then it's going to skew things quite a bit. But yeah, food input is big. And then obviously once you buy stuff like this, as long as you take care of it, it's going to last you several years. So, besides replacing nipple waters, or if you make a mistake and hit something with a tractor, which is on us, right? Those are pretty much one-time purchases with feeders and waters and things like that. But again, make sure you have the land to do it. So that's another calculation you can do, is the footprint of the pen, and then how many times a day you're going to move it, either 1 or 2 times a day, and then calculate that square footage. And if you're kind of unsure about if you have enough room, like let's say in a backyard, you just got to map it out. So measure and do a little survey based upon how many square feet this is going to hit over, let's just say 8-week period. And then you go ahead and do that calculation and make sure you have enough room to not only move it or square footage for it to sit, but you got room to kind of manipulate it and turn it and all that kind of stuff. Put any questions. I know I missed something in here. So if I have anything I look back at during recording and have forgotten to mention, I will put it in the comments, not the comments, I'll put it in the description. That way you guys can read it down there. And I'll put a little note that says, hey, I forgot to say this, or something up on the video. So as always, I do tend to forget 1 or 2 things I meant to say when I first started this process. I think though that is everything on top of mind right now. So with that, I appreciate you guys, and I will talk to you again soon.